To set an attached property in SAML, you can use the attribute syntax like here. The attribute consists of class name and property name. In this case, the class grid and its property row. But how do you set such an attached property in C#? First, let's create here a button instance. To set an attached property, you call the setValue method on that button instance. SetValue is a method that is available on every element in WPF. As you can see, you can pass in the static row property field of the grid class. This is like a key, and under that key you store the value 1. So this is how you set an attached property in C#. When the grid does the layout, it calls the getValue method on the button to get the value for the key grid.row property. Now let's see this in action. In this demonstration, you will learn how to set attached properties in C#. You will do this to move the navigation of the Customers app to the other side of the main window. Let's switch to Visual Studio. You can see here the running Customers application on the left side and Visual Studio on the right side. Now, to move the navigation of the Customers application to the other side of the main window, we need to define another grid column in this root grid. This column definition with a width of auto is for the navigation. So let me copy this one and let's just paste it again into the column definitions property of the grid. This means now that nothing is in this column definition, so it will have a width of 0. When you move the navigation into this column definition, it will have automatically the width of the navigation. So now let's scroll down and let's try this. So here you can see actually the customer list, which is a grid that represents the navigation. Now let's set on that grid the grid column attached property to 2, and now you see the navigation is on the other side. But the application does not look so good because the menu, the header and also the status bar are not spanned across the 3 columns. So let's fix this. Let's scroll up to the menu. Here on the menu you can see grid column span is set to 2, but now we have 3 columns. So let's change this to 3. Also here on the header, let's change grid column span to 3. Now let's scroll down to the status bar, and also here on the status bar, let's change grid column span to 3. Now let's scroll again up to the customer list grid. Now let's try it. Let's set here grid column to 0, and you see the navigation is on the left side. Let's change it to 2, and the navigation is on the right side. Now the idea is to change this attached property when a user clicks on this button. They should be able to move the navigation in the running application. So now let's remove this property again, as the default value is 0 and so the navigation is on the left side. Now first, let's give this grid here a name so that you can access it from the code behind file. Let's just call it Customer List Grid. Now let's expand here this stack panel that contains the buttons. Here you can see the button that contains the move PNG file. So this is this button here. So now let me maximize Visual Studio and let's stop the application. On this button, let's install an event handler for the click event. Let's call it button move navigation _ click. I right-click this event handler and I select Go to Definition. Now we are here in the code behind file of the main window. Now first, let's grab the value of the grid column property that is defined on that customer list grid. To do this, you use that grid, we gave it this name in SAML, and it has a method that is called getValue. This method is used to get the value of a so-called dependency property. An attached property is a special implementation of a dependency property. Every time you need a type of dependency property in WPF, you need to remember that you find these types in static fields. So on the grid class, you find the static field column property. And this field is of type dependency property. So it is pretty much like a key, and now you want to get the value for that key grid column property. As you can see, the method returns the type object. But the grid column property is of type int. So let's cast the return value into an int and let's store it in a column variable. Now you have the column in which this customer list grid is. Next, you need to find out what the new column should be. So let's say that the actual column is 0, then the new value should be 2, and else the value should be 0. Now you have the new value that you need to assign to the attached grid column property on this customer list grid. To do this, you use again the customer list grid, and as you can see, it has a setValue method that takes as a first argument a dependency property and as a second argument the value. So let's pass in here the grid.column property as a dependency property, and let's set the value that we have stored in that new column variable. Now this is it. Let's run the application and let's see if this works. Now let's click on this button and you can see the navigation is on the other side of the main window. Let's click again on the button and the navigation is again on the left side. Great! So now you learned how you can get the value of an attached property in C# and how you can set the value. In the next clip, I will show you how you can optimize this code with static methods that are defined in the grid class.